Hello, Saints, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen to this message. I hope this message helps to provide a deeper understanding and a more personal connection to this week's readings. Our Old Testament reading comes from Exodus chapter 16. We find the Israelites in the second month of their wilderness travel, and the complaining is loud and clear. You would think that by now they might understand that God will not forsake them. Previously, we know that God freed them from slavery, saved them at the Red Sea, and when they complained about being thirsty, God led them to a beautiful oasis. Before we judge them too harshly for what seems constant complaining, we need to better understand the situation. These people were desperately hungry and couldn't see where their next meal was coming from. Miss a meal and feel hungry. Miss a day of meals and feel very hungry. Miss a week and you become desperate. The Israelites considered their condition as life-threatening. And to help put the problem in perspective, the estimated number of people following Moses is 2.5 million. Quite a lot of people to feed. This number is based upon a recorded census taken by Moses at the direction of God when they are at Mount Sinai, which is later on. But isn't complaining a way of turning to God? Trusting that God does not ignore, dismiss, or punish those who call out in fear, anger, suffering, or need. God does not chastise for complaining, back then or now. In verse 9, Aaron tells the Israelites to draw near to the Lord, for he has heard your complaining. So God does provide for them bread, manna, and meat, quail, and his provision is abundant. But he does test their obedience. They are commanded to only collect enough manna for a day. In the New Testament, we have a very familiar parallel. Jesus teaches his disciples to pray for daily bread, part of what we know as the Lord's Prayer. We are to count on God's provision day by day. God heard the pain of the Israelites, and God responded. In spite of their grumbling, God gave them just what they needed. The story illustrates that God listens and does care. Our New Testament reading is from Ephesians chapter 4. I look at the main theme of this reading as being one of unity. Unity between Jews and Gentiles. Unity between believers, men and women, rich and poor, black and white, gay and straight. The church should reflect this unity. The perfection of the church is a process and not a completed event. Christ has equipped the church with gifts so that the church, as Christ's body, may reach maturity. And we are called not just to a job or occupation, but to friendship, family life, citizenship. Verses 4 through 8 are telling us that the church is one new humanity created by Christ. That is something to think and ponder about. One new humanity. We are all gifted in particular ways for the building up of the body, and this is a gift of God's grace. Keep in mind that the unity is not the same as uniformity. The reconciliation of Jews and Gentiles does not eliminate the distinctions between different groups of people. In the previous chapter, we are told, what is made known through the church is the wisdom of God in its rich variety. Many different parts make up the body, just as many different parts make up our body. In verse 2, we are called to tolerance, or bearing with one another. The idea is that not all distinctions will cease, but that even with the persistence of difference, the church may nevertheless grow together as a body to maturity. Something for us to think about at St. John's. Our gospel lesson is found in John chapter 6. So the crowd has just seen Jesus feed 5,000 some people from a few loaves of bread and some fish. And the people are intent on following Jesus. But why? Based upon their questions, they seem more interested in filling their bodies physically than spiritually. They still haven't grasped who this Jesus really is. The questions about works really have to do with upholding Torah law, which they have been immersed in since birth. They are used to having to do something, aka works, to satisfy the law. And their request for signs makes sense because there have been many others who have wrongly claimed to be a prophet or even a Messiah. Jesus' response to their questions is structured in such a way to direct them away from the law and toward himself. He explains to them in verse 27 and 29, "Do not work for the food that perishes, but for food that endures for eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. This is the work of God, that you believe in him whom he has sent." And I think a more appropriate translation or filling in would be, instead of Son of Man, it really could read as the Son of Humanity, tying us back into Ephesians. So could it be that we work for the food that perishes rather than the food that endures for eternal life? Something for us to think about and ponder on. As in the first reading where God sent bread, manna from heaven, God has sent Jesus, the true bread that came down from heaven and gives life through his teachings and his flesh. It's all God's doing, and in both cases, coming down to us. In reflection, we are never satisfied. We continually want more than we already have. If there is too much rain, we complain. If there isn't enough rain, we complain. If we don't get what we want, we believe God doesn't care about us. How soon we forget what God has provided for us in the past. We have a tendency to only live in the moment. We are mistaken if we think that God will provide for us in the present the same way God has provided for us in the past. Times change, resources change, our needs change. This is true not only for ourselves, but also for St. John's. Take care and have a great week.